How many we got in here so far? We got 6 people in here. Just lost my comment. What did Alex Blair say?
Heather Eric Mullen, hello fellas, how's everyone?
No, I didn't get that pay me yet, Alex. I've got your jigs tied. They're all sitting right here. Actually, I'll give you a shot, show you where they're at. Move this around a little bit. But yours are right there on the back. That's yours. I was going to mail them out first thing in the morning. I got 3 or 4 orders to mail out in the morning. Chipper is a jaybird. Let's get it set back up here. So many people are going to show up. I keep moving everything around. We're going to tie a few jigs today, too. I'm going to start out tying some. Actually, I'm going to give a shout out to Jared Wilson. Send me a pack of jig heads for... so thank you for teaching him how to tie jigs. By far, some of the prettiest jig heads I've ever got. Some of the best ones I've ever got to work with. So, I'll show you what we got. We got solid purple with eyes in them. There's some green ones, some yellow ones, some gold ones. Find my camera. Orange ones. Beautiful jig heads. I cannot wait to tie jigs with those. Actually got one in the vise. I couldn't wait. Yesterday I had to stop doing orders and tie one up for myself just to see how they came out. And actually right now it is the only jig I own. I've given almost all my jigs away, sold them all. I don't even have none in my own box. Thank you, Willard Young. I've got one. Let me see that box over there. I got one I tied up yesterday. Well, like I said, I'm just starting my new box back out, but I've got, that's the one I tied up with it yesterday. That's how good you can see it. Beautiful jig. I think they're 1/8 ounce pill heads, sparkle. Feathers I use the most, Kevin, are saddle hackle, and I'll tell you why. The saddle hackle, the tips of the feathers have a lot better point to them. You see the ones that are sharp and crisp, those are the ones I like to tie with. Those are my favorite. It seems like they tie a whole lot neater. They're easier to kind of streamline a jig. You don't have quite the bulk built up in the tail of it as you would like I can't think the name of this hackle, but you can see how rounded the lobes are. Those like that, I don't like those. I'll go more for even that one. It's kind of wide. It's kind of hard to tie with. There's a couple in there you can see. I like the sharp, pointy saddle hackle feathers versus the neck hackle. Ties easier, makes a cleaner looking jig, and and really it's just my preference. There's no right or wrong feather to use. It's kind of what you like, but definitely saddle hackle is my favorite. So let's actually I think I forgot what I done on my stuff. But we're gonna start out with a green head in this one, and I think we're going to do orange body and some orange saddle hackle in it.
What are your 3 favorite color combos?
My 3 favorite color combos: black and chartreuse, pink and white, and solid white. Those are my favorite. Those are the ones I absolutely have the most luck on.
Fishing with Fredo just bought some of the saddle hackle from Bass Pro.
Frito, what's up? You'll like it. It ties good. It ties really neat, really neat, really clean. might have to change this camera so y'all can kind of see how I cut it and what I do with it. If I can get it there. Let's see. Having a hell of a time finding where my camera's at. But when I get it, I pull it out. Find a good straight feather. And that's what I start out with, one about that long. Sometimes Alex say turkey feather, sometimes the dark colors are just as good sometimes. Yes, I powder coat all my jig heads. I powder coat them all, and then I bake them all in the oven at 350 degrees for 20 minutes. I don't usually put a clear coat on it or a hardener. I prefer to bake them. But yeah, all the jig heads I paint, I powder coat every one of them. And I powder coat them and paint them myself. I buy them, unpaint it, and do it myself. That way I know for sure what I got. I know the paint's durable. I know it's going to last. And it keeps me from buying. Before I started painting my own jig heads, I would buy like 100 red ones, 100 chartreuse ones, 100 blue ones, when I really didn't need that many. If I was getting an order for 6 or 7 jigs, I didn't need 100 of them. So I would just, now I tie or paint exactly what I need and then just move on to the next order. Yes, I use a heat gun and I use a propane torch. Normal propane torch. Just like that. Use a heat gun too, but my heat gun's over on the other side of the table. I got a cheap heat gun from Ace Hardware, and it works just as good. And sometimes when I'm painting 1/64th, 1/32 ounce, I would rather use the heat gun than I would the propane. You don't get the jig head quite as hot with the heat gun as you do the propane torch. Trying to get my hack wall stacked up here. And I don't put my hack on any certain way. I don't necessarily line them all up together. Sometimes I like them going different directions. I usually do 2 pieces of hackle. Peacock feathers work good out there. I have some peacock feathers. I have ostrich feathers, marabou feathers, saddle hackle, neck hackle. I've got a lot of different feathers. I got some that are junk, some that I like, some that I don't like. But generally when I cut my hackle, I do two tips and then 1V, 2V, 3Vs. It just kind of depends on how much I want the jig built up.
Which thread do you use now, 70 or 140?
140 denier is what I use the most of. I go from 210, 140, black, flat waxed. This, it's really thick, it's really heavy. I use that mainly a lot when I'm tying bucktail jigs, and I'm going to use UV resin on it. It covers the body a lot better. Don't take quite as much thread to wrap it. Being that I'm going to be using the UV light to do it with, it's going to cure really hard anyway. So the least amount of thread I can use, the better off I like it. And I am in the state of Missouri, southwest Missouri, Bolivar, Missouri, just about 30 miles north of Springfield. So there's my V. That's the next I'm going to put on that.
Do you still need to bake the jigs if you heat the jig heads with the torch to dip in powder paint?
You know, somebody asked if you still need to bake the jig heads. I bake all the ones I sell. If I'm selling them, I bake them. If I'm using them to put in my own box, I don't worry quite so much about baking them. I know how I'm going to use my jig heads. I vertical fish everything, so I don't worry quite so much about beating it up and banging it against rocks. So I don't really worry myself what if I'm gonna chip the paint off the jig head myself. I'm not going to. The people I sell the jigs to, they might bounce them off docks, pontoons, rocks, bricks, bridge pylons. So I bake all those heads. I do use Sally Hansen's hard as nails when I'm wrapping my body or I'm sealing my knot. When I'm doing the UV resin, I do not use Sally Hansen's hard as nails. It's not going to hurt the jig head. It works just as good, but I like to finish the UV resin leaves versus the Sally Hansen's hard as nails when it comes to wrapping a thread. When I coat the thread on a bucktail. Oh yeah, I've banged a few jigs on the side of pontoons before also. Zach's a good one at banging jigs on pontoon boats. I usually got to end up dropping him off on a dock and having him go fetch the jig off a pontoon boat every once in a while.
What's your favorite color for white bass?
Favorite color for white bass is a solid white jig with strips of red in it. I'll use like a white rubber skirt or white feathers, and then I put if I'm tying a rubber skirt, it'll be a solid white skirt with like 2 strands of red rubber in it. If I'm using white feathers, it'll be 2 white feathers with a red V inside of it, so it kind of gives that bleeding effect. I like that bleeding effect with the white bass. But white bass is one of those ones where sometimes, I don't know if it matters what you throw at a white bass sometimes when they're feeding good. Seems like white bass are just not finicky at all sometimes. Caught them on the bottom with live night crawlers fishing for catfish before. What did that say about the glittery powder coat?
You do the glittery powder coat and you have to bake them. What degree and how long do you bake them?
I don't bake the glittery powder coat. And I don't know if there's different types of glittery powder coat. The glittery powder coat I have it in gold. Give me that green basket. And when I powder coated the gold jig heads, if I can find them here, I'll show you exactly what happened to them because I got a whole bag of them. This is what happened to them. And it's kind of hard to tell because it's still kind of glittery. I got some that, like a half a dozen or so, or a dozen that powder coated and then dipped and then baked in the oven. And I'll show you exactly how mine came out. Just like that. There was no glitter left in it whatsoever. They're kind of like a tan color. But they are definitely not. They are definitely not that. This was the one that baked. This one is the one that was not. So I don't know. I've heard people say that you can bake it. I don't know if it's a different type of paint. So on the glittery powder coat, what I end up doing is putting Sally Hansen's hard as nails on it. And that should be hard enough. I haven't had it come off yet. But I don't believe I'll bake anymore. Or find a type that does. Because I've yet to find a way that you can do that. But I love these jig heads. I love the way they turn out. I never bought any. I always wanted to tie some jigs with them. And like I said, a big thank you to Jared Wilson for sending me these. Beautiful jig heads. Really appreciate it. I tied a lot of jigs this weekend. I bet I've got several different, I'm guessing 6 different bobbins. Here's my favorite. It's a cheap $5 bobbin off Amazon. I love this one. This one, $19 off Amazon. What I don't like about this one is and they probably make these that are longer. That's what you use to pull your thread back up through your bobbin. It sticks out through the bottom like maybe a 64th of an inch. There's so hard to get the thread to go back inside this bobbin. It ties good. It's comfortable in your hand, but it is a pain in the butt to get it to thread, and I had to do a lot of adjustment right here on this jaw to be able to get it to hold that right. It was too loose, it was too tight. Each different spool of thread I put on there was different. So I leave my thick 210 denier, I think I got on this flat wax. I leave this one on here. I use it quite a bit when I'm doing bucktail jigs. I don't change it if I don't have to.
Does tying jigs relax you or the opposite?
Nope, tying jigs to me is my ultimate getaway other than actually crappie fishing. It's just a good way to get away from things. I like being creative. I like making things with my hands. I've always been that way. Tying jigs is, I come down here, I turn my radio on, I get a cup of coffee, and I can sit down here and waste away a whole day before I realized how much time I've actually been down here. Some days I don't want to be down here. I'm done with it. I kind of get over it. Need to break off the vise every once in a while. But for the majority of the time, I enjoy doing it. I like tying jigs to send them to other people. I like seeing the fish other people catch. It's kind of rewarding. And then I can get up in the morning before I go to the lake, kind of study what the conditions are going to be, what the lake's going to be like. And I can sit down here and tie up 5 or 6 of my own and take off. And me and Zach are kind of the opposite when it comes to jigs. I would rather fish the jig. Zach would rather fish minnows. Yeah, the music's missing. I didn't turn the music on tonight. It's all down here, but I didn't want it blasted out or drowning anything in the background or YouTube, get in trouble by YouTube off of it. The music is all for tonight. Biggest crappie I've ever caught off one of my jigs. Probably, I think last April we caught 2. The biggest one I caught was pushing 16 inches, and Zach caught one that was almost the same size. 2 different colored jigs, 2 different days. One day was cloudy, windy. I was using a white and silver one, and I think the next day he was using a chartreuse and green one tipped with the minnow. The one I caught was a big black crappie, and the one he caught was a big white crappie.
What's your favorite type of music?
No, he said he loves my taste in music.
Yeah, but what music do you like?
I listen to everything. No, there's no favorite kind of music. If you got in a truck with me, you're liable to hear everything from Metallica to Willie Nelson to Charles to is it still going? Or did I lose feed?
Just,
And then, come on. saddle hackle.
What's going to do for me?
Open that door.
There's something that's going for me.
Huh?
It's going for me.
Is it? I don't know. Mine says reconnected, so I can't tell if it's connecting, if I've lost feed. But actually, I just got a text message from a guy who just caught 2 really big ones on my jigs today. That's good now. It still says, mine still says connecting.
Do you sell your jigs variety pack?
I don't really sell a variety pack. I don't have any certain, I don't keep anything tied up for stock because crappie fishing jigs, everybody's got something different they want. You know, there's no 2 guys that will usually order the same jig. I could probably be safe if I tied up a bunch of black and chartreuse or pink and white. Other than that, everybody calls and they all want something different. So I try to tie up what people are looking for. That kind of keeps me in business tying jigs, is I'm more willing to tie up something that somebody else might not, or might not be, you know, willing to tie up. I try to keep the prices on all my jigs at the exact same. It might be changing, but
Did your buddy there grow up with you tying jigs?
yeah, kind of. Where's he at? There he is. He's back there hiding somewhere.
He's playing with Chewy.
Yeah, he tied jigs. How many jigs did you tie yesterday?
I don't remember.
60 probably.
Yeah.
I think over the weekend we've tied up probably 150, 160 jigs trying to get caught back up. But it keeps us both busy during the off season when we're not fishing. Sometimes it keeps me too busy, but I don't mind if I got time and the weather's crappy out. I think most of the lakes here still got ice on them, and some of them might be starting to lose ice. But yeah, that whip finish tool kicked my butt the first time I ever tried to use it. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but it's one of those tools that once you figure it out, once you get it, you got it. You don't, it's like riding a bike, you don't ever forget. Tip for a beginner, what is that?
Wanting to tie jigs for themselves?
Huh?
Tip for beginner wanting to tie jigs for themselves.
Tip for a beginner. Do what you want to do. You don't have to copy what somebody else says. You know, you have to do this. You have to do that. There's no right or wrong way to tie it. Unless it falls apart. If it falls apart, you've probably done it wrong. But come up with colors, experiment. Try something different. I've said that since, you know, I first started making YouTube videos. I'm trying to help people learn how to tie jigs. Tie that jig the way you want that jig tied. Make it look the way you want it to look. Don't stick with just the normal just because you think that's the way it's got to be tied, because it's not. You can tie jigs so many different ways. So many different color combos. Try different things in the body, different things in the tail. I get all of my stuff from a local fly shop. I get it all from Plateau Fly Shop in Springfield, Missouri. Those guys down there have been tying regular trout flies for years, and they had so much material that I could incorporate into a crappie jig. You know, and I'm sure there's been people in there buying stuff for crappie jigs before. But when I go in there, that's specifically what I'm after, is crappie jigs. But I also like to hear them say, you know, I like to hear those guys talk about some flies. And I've been trying to figure out different ways to use classic fly patterns to put into some of my crappie jigs. Something different, something unique. So there'll be some videos with some of that coming up here shortly. If I can figure out a better way to get a connection down here because I have no idea what that feed's doing, if it's working right, not working right. It looks like it's working okay. I get some stuff off Amazon, but it's very little. I get my flash, all my flash I get off Amazon. You can't really go wrong with flash. Oh, Dieter Melhorn says, what do you say?
This looks way easier than it is. Oh, wow.
It's easy, Dieter.
So James Donkery wants to know if you can make an all-white one and call it a Lyle Stokes Santa.
Make an all-white one and call it the Lyle Stokes Santa. Last I heard last night, it was going to be called the Geriatric Jig. Did y'all get rid of that name, decide not to go that route?
Someone wants to know if you tie bass jigs.
I tie a few bass jigs, but not a lot. And I just haven't pushed myself yet to do it. And I usually stay so busy with crappie and bluegill and walleye jigs that I don't really have the time for them. And I've got to teach myself, I got to use a lot more material in a bass jig than I do crappie jigs. And right now I haven't had a very big demand for it. I've had a few people ask me for it. But if I do tie bass jigs, they're going to be pretty close to along the lines of like a walleye jig. Bucktail, mainly, Marabou, things like that if I started tying bass jigs. And I didn't glue that last one down just for sake of time, so actually we better glue this one down. Well, that sucks, mess your motor up. Ain't nothing worse than having a boat and having outboard motor problems. Can't say nothing bad about outboard motor problems. I might jinx the one that's in the background there. Now I can say I own 3 crappie jigs of my own. All the ones that we're going to tie on the show tonight were actually going in my box. I figured that way gave me a chance to have to make me some. Let's see, we did those with green. What else we got in here? Let's do some just the opposite with orange. Yeah, I don't want the jinx on my boat. Mine's old enough anyway. Every time I go out, it could be the last time it makes it out. So I'm nice in my boat. I take it easy on it. Most of the time. Sometimes it's fun to get it out and stretch it, though. Yeah, you could put weed guards on them, and I could tie weed guards in them. And I actually had somebody ask me last week about doing some jigs with weed guards. And I was going to force myself to learn how to do it, and I didn't. So I kind of dropped the ball on that, whoever asked me to tie jigs with weed guards. I don't think it's very hard. I think, actually, if I was going to tie a weed guard in my crappie jig, I'd probably refer to Richard Jean, the Fishing Machines video on how he done it and do that with my crappie jigs. We've got I have a 1984 Champion. It's still got a hull. It's in really, really good shape. The carpet's in really good shape. It's an older boat, but it's got a 200 horse Mariner on it. 2-stroke. Me and Zach have nicknamed it Frankenstein. Once you get it going, it goes. You get that initial crank over going on it, and you're set for the day.
Do crappie bite on chicken?
Do crappie bite on chicken? Did Dieter Melhorn ask that?
Kevin's silent fishing.
I don't know if I've ever caught a crappie on chicken. You're saying that it's not possible. I thought Truman Reservoir was the blue cat capital of the world. I know one thing, when I'm going crappie fishing, I ain't getting my hands in raw chicken, chicken liver, night crawlers. Only thing I usually tip my jig with is a minnow or crappie nibble, pink crappie nibble. That's the only thing that goes on my crappie jigs. Anybody else in here close to Missouri? In Missouri? Around Missouri? Anybody crappie fish today? I'm pretty sure most of the lakes are probably starting to open back up. I know the water temperature's still got to be really cold. Think next weekend mine's definitely going out. My favorite fish to eat, it's honestly a toss-up between crappie or bluegill. I like crappie and I like bluegill. And honestly, I'd have to lean more toward bluegill. I think bluegill's probably the best eating other than walleye. I'd say bluegill, walleye, and crappie. Fall fishing is my favorite time of year to go for crappie fishing. Actually, I like the summer and I like the fall. I like it when they get out in deep water and we're picking them off of deep water structures. I haven't been on Table Rock Lake in years. I think I went to Table Rock when I was a little kid. Me and Dad went there. I grew up in Kentucky, and we took a trip to Table Rock and bass fished one weekend. That's the last time I've been there. $35 people in the house. It ain't too bad. But we're going to call this one number one. Next week we might, I think what I wanted to do was let y'all decide what we was going to do. Are we going to tie jigs, paint jigs, talk about jigs? I want y'all to kind of set what the show is going to be about. And then we'll go from there. There's water open here in Missouri somewhere today because the guy just sent me a picture of, sent a picture of two big old crappie putting my jigs to work. I'm pretty sure he was probably fishing on Stockton Lake.
Any tips on finding crappie for bank? Any tips on finding crappie for bank?
Find you rock banks, find you dead logs, tree stumps. Find something on a bank that is different than the rest of the bank. fishing from the bank, that's how I grew up chasing crappie. I loved walking down the bank of a lake in the springtime or a river, ponds, hunting for crappie. And I'd always try to find something that made one spot on the lake a little bit different than anything else. And that's what I would go after. My number one was something that's got to do, something that's putting shade on the lake, whether it's a big tree overhanging in the water, stumps in the water, dead log in the water. Go from where the bank turns from rock to mud. Look for gravel spots on the bank. Look around on the bank and see if you can tell if anybody else has been fishing there. If it looks like other people have been fishing there, it might be worth giving it a shot. We fish a lot of docks early in the spring when the wind gets too bad or it's raining too much. We go to some lakes and we fish them. And if it's a dock I haven't fished, the first thing I look for is see where all the crappie nibbles are all smashed up at. And that's usually about where everybody's been fishing.
Where in Kentucky did you live?
I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, and then moved to Brandenburg, Kentucky. I lived real close to Fort Knox when I was a kid. Real close to Fort Knox. Fort Knox Military Reservation was pretty much our backyard. But we fished the Ohio River, the McAlp locks and dams. We fished Rough River Lake. We would go to Kentucky Lake, Barkley Lake, Nolin River. Where else did we go down there? We used to fish some of the lakes in Indiana. We used to fish Patoka Lake, Deans Lake, Taylorsville Lake in Kentucky. Really, you're in Louisville. Do you fish the Ohio River down there at the McAlp locks and dams? You do any sauger fishing down there? Who was that? What was that guy's name? Said he lives in Louisville.
Silent fishing?
Kevin.
Silent fishing?
Kevin Silent Fishing. Because I know right about now the sauger fishing's got to be starting to pick up. Man, I used to love to fish the Ohio River. That Ohio River had every fish in it you could think of, and then some you didn't know was in there. And see, we used to go to New Albany. We used to put the boat in New Albany and go away from the locks and dams to catfish. And then there were some times we'd go up to the locks and dams to catfish, but yeah, we catfished a lot in Brandenburg. We used to catfish a lot where Otter Creek came out into the Ohio River and catch a lot of flatheads down there. Always caught more flatheads than we ever did blue cats. That was fun. I miss fishing Ohio River. Most of my family still lives down there. I sent my cousin Bobby Ritchie a bunch of orange and chartreuse jigs to fish for sauger on the Ohio River, and that's why I was kind of curious if they were if they were starting to bite down there pretty good or not. But we fished the Ohio River before. We fished the Ohio River down in Louisville before the Indians had turned it into a national park. Back before then, when you could drive all the way down there to the riverbank. Spent a lot of mornings down there. What was that last comment?
I fish walleye on Current River, but they're about to move out.
Yeah. That was a picture of a bunch of crappie that got caught on my jigs today. Can't really see it very good, but there's a lot of them. I'm impressed. I'm jealous. So who else out there is tying jigs? Any questions, comments, concerns, myths you want me to bust? Because like I said, you'll never have to do a jig exactly the way somebody says. When I first started tying, when I was tying jigs and I would watch YouTube channels, I would pick up from multi people at the same time. I would do SK's Crappie Fishing Adventures. I would do, who else did I watch on YouTube? Well, I used to watch Big Ken a lot on Facebook. There's a couple others on YouTube I would watch tie jigs, try to learn a few new techniques from, and I would incorporate into my jig what I watched them do. And like I said, to me, there's never been no right or wrong way. That you absolutely had to tie a jig. How do you keep Marabou tying off? Let's do a Marabou jig. Let's do a silver Marabou jig. Not one of my favorite jigs to tie. I don't get a lot of orders from Marabou. I don't mind tying them. Usually once I tie it up, I'm always thinking, why don't I tie more of these? They look good when they're done. Some really nice looking silver Marabou down here.
Has a Terravice and he has made it work, but what do you think would be a good setup?
If the Frito, if the Terravice works, I would, stay with it. Unless you're looking for something, if it's and getting ready to break and it's on its last leg, I would probably stick with it. The vise I've got now, the Peak vise, has definitely very smooth, very easy to get to. It's nice. It's a smooth vise. It locks jigs down really good. The first one I got, I had a few issues with it, but I'm pretty sure it was just a fluke because this one has been perfectly fine. On the first one I had, this part started separating from the shaft. It's a spline pressed into this head. Somehow it didn't go in tight, and that there kind of worked its way loose. It never came off while I was tying, but it was pretty close to it. This is number 2, and I've tied 5 times as many jigs with this one as I did that first one, and I've had no issues yet with this. It's a price-wise, it's probably like mid-range, $160. Very smooth tying vise, and biggest reason I wanted it was for I wanted that inline rotary vise, or not the inline rotary vise, but I wanted it all where it was perfectly in line and stayed right there in that one spot. It made the Bucktail jigs so much easier.
Do you ever tie sabiki flies?
I've never tied a sabiki fly. I don't tie a whole lot of flies, but I'm going to start tying. I'm going to start tying some. I'm going to start tying some trout flies, but I'm going to turn it into a crappie jig with those techniques and that style. There's my silver Marabou. This way it comes. It comes just like your regular saddle hackle feathers do. It's all stitched together. Find a good feather. It's got find you a feather and pull it off. And the feathers you're going to use are going to be right here on the end of that. Actually, I don't like that Marabou at all. It's woolly booger Marabou, so it's a shorter body. This is what I was looking for.
you ever want to go down to North Texas, Fishing with Frito will do his best to get you on.
Get me on. I'd like to go down to Texas to go fishing. I could handle that. I've been selling a lot of jigs to some guys in Louisiana, making me jealous for catching spawning crappie already. All right, so when you pull your marabou feather off, that's what you got. And you can see all those tips right here at the front. I've heard a lot of people say you can only use what's right here in the middle. But to me, I see probably 1, 2, 3, I see 4 or 5 jigs right there at least in that one marabou feather. So I'm gonna start with my ones up here in the front that are long. I'm just gonna keep pulling them off. Pull them together until I feel like I got enough to fill that jig body up. Which, like I said, when I fill a jig body up, I go the length from behind the head to the bend of the hook. And then I go about that one more time. Once I got it all clean and pulled off, I'm gonna cut it right there. That's what I end up with. Going all over the place. I'm gonna wet it down just a little bit with my fingertips. Push it down over the shank of the hook. And that's where it goes down, right there. I can. Here's some more we can use to fill it up with until I got it to where I wanted it at. That's crazy. Small world. And the one good thing about marabou, usually when you start wrapping it, it lays down. And you can tell that jig comes out with really nice looking body. And let's see.
Will McMullen says, my question is keeping the same consistency and length of hackle and bucktail in conjunction with the jig hook.
When I first got Zach to tying, I laid a jig head on my table. Actually, I can show you exactly where it's at. I'm gonna move the camera just a little bit. And right here on the table, I traced out a jig head, and then I left a line on it so that way he would know exactly how long to cut it with that size jig head, which I'm pretty sure when I marked that out, that was probably an 1/8 ounce jig head. But that was easy for him to kind of lay the material up there and cut it off according to that picture. It helped him out, and it got him to where you get to a point where you can kind of feel it between your fingers, whether it's enough or not enough. It's kind of the more, it's one of those things like the more you do it, the more you get the feel for it. But the bucktail jigs it's probably my favorite to tie up. They're probably, to me, the easiest to tie up. I'm gonna do black body in this one.
Steve Crouch is looking forward to trying some of your artwork.
Who was?
Steve Crouch.
And that is the way I tie a Marabou jig. Like I said, if you wet that Marabou down just a little bit, it's a little bit easier to work with. Don't kind of loses the tendency to fly away, go up your nose, get stuck in your eyes, and you got to tame it. And like I said, every time I get done tying a Marabou jig, I always wonder why I don't tie more. Because I know the action is better on a Marabou jig. This way they come out. Makes for a pretty jig. Is there very many people out there tonight that tie with Marabou or something, something similar to it, like craft fur? Craft fur is absolutely hated. I hate craft fur. But the Marabou goes all over the place, that's for sure. If you're going to tie crappie jigs, I don't know if I would get the woolly booger Marabou unless you're tying something really, really small. This come from a friend of ours that had a whole bunch he was getting rid of, and they used to tie flies and go down to Bennett Springs and trout fish with. I don't know if you can see it floating around, but it's already everywhere. Can you see it on the screen? And Marabou floating all over the place.
Justin uses his dog hair sometimes.
Yeah, that's what it's like. It really does. It ends up in your mouth. It ends up in your nose. I know there's some people that love it. Like I said, it ties pretty good, and it actually has a lot more action than rubber tail feathers or probably the hackle does. I think I'm getting ready to get off here too. I just kind of want to spend an hour. I haven't really done a whole lot of live stream. If there's any kind of demand for it, I might keep doing it. I might do it once a week. I might start doing it while we're on the boat. We're definitely going to do some YouTube videos fishing on the boat this year, a lot more. Anybody got any requests, anything they want to see? Send me a message and let me know. Like I said, we got up to, how many we got up to? 30 some? 36, something like that?
Like 38.
That wasn't too bad for the first one. Zinger's Angler. Nope, I've never bought anything from there. Well, thank you guys. Send me a message. Let me know if there's something in particular you want to see me do, and we will give it a shot. We've been on here for 55 minutes. Thank you, Justin. I appreciate it. Louisiana, Willis Leroy. I just been sending a lot of jigs to Louisiana. Sending a lot to Venice, Louisiana. Yeah, be careful when you put the Marabou on. Do it in sections. Do like the back half of your jig first, and then roll your vise over. Tie a little bit more in, roll it back over, and see how it looks. It's easier to add more than it is to take it back out. Alex, your jigs will be in the mail tomorrow, sir. Yep, the spawn is on in Louisiana. That's what I've been hearing. I've been seeing pictures of them black crappie all purple, and you can tell they're definitely spawning down there. Good, I'm glad you enjoyed it, Victor. And if that is it, folks, I believe I'm out of here. I'm going to figure out a way to get some better Wi-Fi down here next week. That's for dang sure. I brought my daughter down here thinking she could know how to run all this because it's all like hocus pocus to me. But she screwed all that up. All right. From my jig time shop, I will talk to you guys later.